4 to choose from, so I'll go with it.
Calling it the third best is really too far.
Put it above. Yeah, no, okay. It's all right. It's the second worst.
So now that the show has started, that'll be the poll to all the people watching.
I do that with full knowledge and consent. Welcome to the Dresden Files podcast, the only Dresden Files podcast where we talk about the Dresden Files, and it's called the Dresden Files podcast. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about a book.
White Nigget.
Huh? White Nigget.
No, God Nigget. Jesus Christ.
I thought that's what you said. White Knight. I thought, privacy. It's obviously Night. Okay, so now to the K-N-I-G-H-T.
All right, this podcast is done.
Well, it's funny, though, because it's not spelled K-N-I-G-H-T, because that's Summer Night. We got the other one.
Right.
Oh, my God.
No
That was a mistake, but oh, my God.
Yeah, White Knight.
Yeah. Because if it was spelled K-N-I-G-H-T, then it would have been too much fodder for the social justice warrior crowd.
So
I have misspelled everything so far.
Thank God we can edit this in post.
News at 10. We do have some news, specifically as of yesterday. Jim is up to chapter 46 in Peace Talks, the book in which everything is in.
Yes! Woo!
Everything is
everything.
Wonderful. Anyway, so that's pretty much all the news I got.
I mean, that's pretty much all the news, I think.
We got like 5 chapters left.
Unless we want to start counting the days that this podcast has been without a book, because it's all of them. So
all of the days. That's so true.
I mean, it is weirdly impressive. We're on episode 83 without new content.
Can you imagine?
No. Short stories.
Well, yeah. But I mean, and also roughly doing every other week, though. I mean, it was good. It was good to get brief cases, and there's been plenty of little short story nuggets and stuff like that. But we haven't had a major book release or anything like that. And the short stories came out over time. So brief cases, we got like the one extra story, right? Everything else we kind of handled over the last couple of years as they got put out. So
same with this one. I mean, with side jobs in the beginning.
Right.
Those had come out pretty. It was basically just Aftermath that was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was late to all that though, so it was all new to me.
Yeah, me too. As far as short stories go.
Right. So White Knight, because we're not going to try and say anything cutesy again. So
terrible decision, apparently.
Yeah. Well, you invited him.
It was entirely her idea.
Yeah. So this one's kind of fun. I mean, should we just do a quick plot synopsis and then get into Crazyville?
Yeah, let's do the synopsis first and then conspiracies after.
Right.
Because it might work better.
I'm sorry, you don't want to sit here for another hour and 45 minutes?
It's starting to sound like structure. So
and we don't do that here.
So Harry still got Lash, which is important because he calls her Lash instead of Lashiole. That I'm just putting that out there because that's going to be one of my things. Thomas has disappeared, kinda. The Ordo people are showing up dead, and it turns out, just a lot of low-level magic users are turning up dead in a bunch of cities, which kind of sounds familiar because we're going to see more of that in Aftermath and things like that. They think that Thomas is in on it. Spoiler alert, he's not, but he's stupid close to it because it's the White Court vampires. And we find out that inside the White Court, there's like three major houses. The Malvora, the Scavis, and then the Wraiths, which are like...
to those before.
Do what?
He dropped hints to the 3 major houses before. So like it's a...
Yeah. Because I think he talks about... Yeah, he talks about Madrigal, being... Like, he's a cousin, but he's weird, and I think he even calls him... Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But yeah, like you mentioned, it's been hinted. So... we find out, there's a couple of competing interests because it's the White Court, so they're all backstabby and sneaky and shit. 2 of the competing houses, the Scavis and the Malvora, had sent like their heirs, I guess, or like basically, the heirs to their house out to start killing people and stir shit up. Harry gets wise to it, and this is one of the few books where I don't feel like Harry just gets like totally annihilated before he even shows up to the end fight. Like Harry makes it out mostly unscathed, in comparison. So they run around, they do some investigative bullshit. Elena's back. That's important because reasons. But it's just nice to see in comparison because I like the contrast with her, and I like he picks up a trick that we get to see in the next book that he uses with the whole lightning chain. And then basically it culminates in he starts to put everything together. Demeter, Helen
Beckett.
Right? She's back from Stormfront, so we get a huge freaking arc back to there. One of the worst scenes in the entire series is there as far as like emotional gut punching. And then
this
Harry,
is EG's least favorite book.
Right?
No, Harry said it's in the bottom 3.
Yeah. He hasn't decided if it's worse than.
No, it's not worse than Ghost Story, but it's in the bottom 3.
Okay, so it's his third worst because I think Ghost Story and Full Moon are
probably Full Moon is slightly worse than this too.
Yeah, so Harry gets to call in Carlos, which is always fantastic. So we get some more Ramirez. They go have a duel with the White Court, and Harry and Marcone make it out mostly unscathed. Murphy makes it out mostly unscathed. Everybody else just kind of gets their shit kicked a little bit. So
yeah, Hendrix has a finger that Murphy decided to be mean to, and she got told to pick on someone her own size.
It was it's such a great moment because Hendrix is like, but okay, fine. But I liked the whole twist at the end with Marcone showing up with all the soldiers of fortune, whatever, just because there's practically no indication like going through the book. Like I think at one point he says he's talking to Marcone, but it feels like a throwaway line. And then all of a sudden Marcone shows up, everything sans the helicopter and guard because she's mysteriously absent this book and just throws down. But we get to see more of Monarch, even though it's not fully addressed that almost certainly Marcone, hired some additional mercenaries from Monarch for this. And then we get more with the Black Council and Cal, presumably, or at least somebody on Cal's level. Or did he ended up figuring it out, right?
Yeah, Cal was there. Okay. He was, because when he did the Little Chicago following the gray cloak person he couldn't identify yet that tried to burn down Anna's apartment, he was speaking to Cal. Cal noticed him, gave him a head blast outside of Little Chicago, and then he showed up at the end again.
Cal wasn't hiding his voice in this book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, at least the way it's not mentioned that it has a weird wobble.
But it was also the only time you really hear him is through that like illusion projection thing. So that probably stifled something of it.
Right. What I was thinking is that he didn't know to hide his voice specifically. So it's probably his real voice. Jim didn't do like a warble either. He spoke like a normal person. Very deep resonant.
Plus, there's also the possibility that whatever backlash happened, hurt him, changed things. Nicodemus speaks raspier later on because of what Harry does to him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think when he showed up initially, like he was all raspy, just mostly because it sounded like he hadn't gotten over getting blown up in Deadbeat. Because doesn't he make a reference to him sounding a little raspy or moving oddly or something like that?
Well, I think he mentioned that he was moving like he had been hurt.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's mentioned that he's moving weird, like stiffly or something, but
right.
Which makes sense.
Nothing about his voice, and James didn't do like the warble voice. He did a very deep baritone kind of for it. I don't know if he had insider knowledge, which like he just went with whatever he wanted.
Could be.
I mean, let's face it. It's not like he's got the character arcs 50 books ahead either, so he's got to work with what he's got.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so, I mean, at the end, we get free of Lash finally. She drops a whole bunch of hints about the Starborn stuff. We get to see more outsider stuff. Those are actually directly related because, she's like, wait a minute, because of this, we can do that, sort of thing. We see the crazy, prehistoric ghouls, or, that's kind of how Harry describes them anyway. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, as far as broad strokes go, like that's the most of it. There's plenty of political intrigue between Harry and the White Court, and Lara specifically, which is a lot of fun, and loads of stuff that gets set up for the next 2-ish books. Even
this is one of the books that had a lot of setup that we see later.
Right,
a lot of it, like Marcone becoming a signatory of the Cords.
Right, and the Paranet, and just yeah, we could. So I mean that's probably worth talking about. Like the Ordo goes on to become, the surviving members become the Paranet in a lot of ways. Harry comes up with the idea, gets Thomas and Elaine involved, and uses the Were Guild from the White Court to fund it. So we'll see them come back just in little snippets, mostly like they just keep their ear to the ground and look out for each other, mostly from what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
The little electric chain thing I think was fun because, Harry's like, oh yeah, that's a neat idea. And then when you see it in Small Favor and you're like, oh shit, that looks familiar, so you get to see his take on some of that stuff.
I like how I'm pretty sure Elaine is making a joke when she says she's plugging it into the power socket, but
right.
He went with it literally.
Well, it's just funny because it's like one of those things is easier than the other. Like I imagine, the 120 volts out of your wall socket is plenty for charging that sort of thing in lieu of a lightning storm, which unless, she's living in Tampa, for example, would happen all the damn time. But it just seems kind of funny that she's like, oh yeah, thunderstorms. And it's like, no, that's
right. But she was in LA in a desert.
Right. Yeah. So whatevs, but it was cute and it just shows some cleverness. It's nice to see her bend the, traditional wizard tropes and poke fun at Harry for being involved with them.
And she has a shield ring, right? Not a shield bracelet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That means less powerful.
One, and doesn't she use like an anklet? Do we see that in this one, or is that somewhere?
It might have been the other one.
Okay,
I don't remember.
But she does have a lot of jewelry that she uses. Like when they mentioned after they found Anna dead, that she had a whole bunch of bangles on her wrist that apparently were heightening her ability to sense things, and that was her defense, is being able to have heightened senses.
Oh, right.
So she puts a lot of things into metal and into jewelry because it's easier to carry, I assume.
Right. Yeah, and
she's a girl.
She pokes fun at the phallic symbols like staff, blasting rod, whatever, and she's much more, for lack of a better word, sensitive than and finesse than Harry is. Because Harry even still is doing brute force, but we do get some pickup lines about how teaching Molly has helped him get much more finesse than he used to, which we just see increase and increase and increase until he starts pulling his own veils and changes and everything like that, which I feel like were really cool, subtle ways of powering him up without necessarily giving him like, oh, well, you punched a bigger monster in the face. In this case, it's you've been teaching the Padawan how to do veils. And she's really good at them, but you got to learn too, so you can teach her the mechanics,
And not even just that, but going at the basics of the wizardry too. And
right.
Going back to basics after you've had a little taste of something more advanced and realize how important they are, which is just true to learning things in general.
Right.
And she also complimented his shield bracelet, saying she couldn't really necessarily pulled off what he did now that he adapted it with the to deal with heat and stuff like that.
And he had mentioned specifically it was helping teach Molly that gave him the idea to even try it, in a way. So just cool little bits like that. So
Molly is annoying in this book.
Oh yeah.
She's still like she thinks she's like these typical.
Well, she was annoying in the last book too. So
think about it though, right? So we're
like
literally
a know-it-all.
Well, yeah, we just came out of proven guilty, and so this is the first real time we're seeing her as Harry's apprentice, where she's not just trying to jump his bones. And so, she's still doing the I know best bullshit that she pulled with her own family, certainly. And Harry knows that. And so Harry sets up all these little teachable moments.
How many beats?
Yeah, exactly. Or uses her against herself because it's like, I've told her not to come with me 3 times today. So invariably she's in the back seat, isn't she? She's right behind me, so, except it was, I guess she showed up with, was it Ramirez when they were talking about the duel or whatever, and she like barges in on him, and they have the final how many beats conversation, and
then she learns to lift the X-wing.
Yeah, right. She's like, but I don't understand. All I said was I was afraid. Yep, that's the first smart thing you've said the whole time, Molly. That's how dumb you are. That's the first smart thing you've said. So,
hey, listen, she got like a psychic orgasm out of it. So
from the dead person.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Good times.
Which was very, very unlucky and unfair because now she has a positive reinforcement for being stupid.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he says as much on the car ride back. He's like, listen, think about it.
The heroin probably felt really good too, or whatever it is. He says, like,
right.
That sobered her up.
Because it was so much of an impact on her that she felt the Skavis die. And that's when it finally had the light bulb moment of, hey, this is really important and this is dangerous. It kind of seems like he should have done something like that to her before, because she's a sensitive, is like make her feel something die, take her to a slaughterhouse or something.
Maybe.
Well,
but,
I mean, we also find out later that kind of mentality doesn't help her. She ends up homeless because of all that psychic kind of damage from death.
Right. But if you need to make her feel something bad so that she understands how bad it can be, and she's a sensitive, it seems like he kind of missed the whole how to prod her into the right direction a little bit.
Well, and that's actually, remember, the one of the training techniques is to throw rocks at people?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that?
Right.
Yeah, and he threw snowballs. But I mean, that's what we find out there as the series goes on. He's been pulling his punches with her from day one.
Right, and that does turn out to be a bad thing, because when she gets hit really hard, she can't handle it.
Mm-hmm. Again, I'm going to differ with you, because the whole changes thing isn't that she got hit hard. I mean, granted, that was a big part of it. She broke the laws of magic, and they're specifically there to protect you from doing shit like that, because you don't just change them, you change yourself, which is the whole thing he's been telling her in the first place.
Right.
So granted, losing Harry is a big fucking deal, but it really fucks her up beyond the pale, because she did it, and in her psyche somewhere she knows it, so.
Right. He confessed to it. He told her to do it, and there's all those things. I would say that she didn't break the law of magic there. It's just hard to verify. But the fact that she hated herself because she thinks she killed him, yes, that did a lot of damage.
But the negative impact of black magic is just like a universal rule. It's like, you do these things, it changes you. She meddled with Harry's mind, it changes her.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it'll be interesting to go back through it, because a lot of what Harry's argument in proven guilty was that you think that it's the right thing to do. That's part of how it damages you, is that, you start using magic to fix all of your problems. And that's where sorcerers and warlocks kind of go off the rails a little bit, is that they just start using it for everything. So that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, you're probably right. Just the fact that she did it to Harry, whether he wanted to or not, but she also had to wipe her own memory, right?
No, she remembered. That's why.
She remembered.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the guilt.
And we'll see this more when we get through the ghost story portion, but she felt that he was coming back to take her away because she killed him.
Right. Yeah, because that was the first thing she says, right? Is like, are you
coming to take me away? It's like, why would you say that?
Right.
But because she's a sensitive, and you see it in the short stories, like It's My Birthday Too, she felt someone die and she was frozen. And he knew that that's what she was dealing with, and they were getting into a big problem. He didn't seem to get that because she's a sensitive, he needs to teach her differently.
Right.
He only got that she can't do brute force power the way he can.
Right. Well,
Elena and Molly is actually a lot alike in terms, like, they're way more subtler works. I don't think Elena's is sensitive, right? But they are both like more like subtle and finesse than Harry.
Right. Elaine definitely, it's finesse. She's got almost all of Harry's raw power, because we see her cut loose. Like, one of my favorite moments in this book is the whole, like, the moment where the Skavis has got her in the tub and basically talking her down and dying, and then you've got two great moments with the whole, Harry getting in touch with her with their little telepathy spell and using his will to break her out of that. I mean, I would love to yell into the microphone here, but I think you get it. Just the, I am Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden, hear me, moment. And then coupled with, should we go in and get her? And then the entire front of the fucking building coming off because she just blows this asshole right out into the street. And it's just such a great thing, because Harry talks about Elaine's probably as strong as I am, maybe even stronger in some ways. And then you actually see her cut loose for once, and you're like, oh yeah, shit, that was a lot. That was a Harry move. So
earlier than that too, when the building's burning down and she pulls out that like smoke suppressant spell, and he's
that was like a really subtle,
I couldn't do that shit.
Right.
A more subtle thing, right? Not the power thing, not having a big bank of battery.
No, well, that's what he says. She's nearly as powerful as I am, but she's also better at the the delicate stuff.
Right.
And that's, she made it, you have to stay behind to let people through this thing. No, it's permeable. They can walk through it. And he's like, holy crap.
Permeable?
Also, when they were at the water beetle getting attacked by the ghouls, which also this is the first time we see the water beetle, which comes up almost every book afterwards, she did a wind air vortex thing in order to handle all of the smoke there.
Yep.
Right.
That's a huge working of air.
Right. And we know that because Harry talks about that shit all the time. Like, he doesn't do air so much anymore versus Will, because air is a whole lot harder to handle. And he really gets into it again when he starts to do it again finally versus it's Anna Asher, right? I
was going to say, after he becomes the knight, air and darkness working for the queen, it seems like he goes back to air a little bit more.
Ooh, that's a good observation. I like it. But yeah, like just specifically his little bow staff technique with deflecting your bolts and shit like that. But because we've got the big working in Stormfront. He does Ventus Servitus to get his staff like a dozen times practically, but he stops using it somewhere around. I want to say once he switches from fire to force with blood rights, because he basically eschews a lot of those more raw things. And he starts using Fozari a lot more, deadbeat on.
He's getting his most important air spell.
Which is the Dustbuster spell?
The blow dryer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
It's kind of like Lucio's coffee spell, isn't it?
Well, I was going to say, it seems like all the wizards have these little quality of life.
I was going to say, if there's not a spell that can help you around the kitchen, what the hell is the point of even being a wizard?
Right.
I mean, come on. He lights his candles by saying "flick 'em bickus."
Right. Which is such a teenagery thing. Like, it just, like, you can tell that was definitely his first cantrip,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, that comes up in the flashback, one of the flashbacks in Ghost Story.
Yeah.
Right.
Where he's talking with Dumorn, and then they go play catch, and yay.
Yep.
And then that catch that turned out to be not that fun, probably.
Wow. No, I think that catch was not like I'm throwing baseballs at your head, try and stop them. That was like post.
Probably not yet, because Elaine wasn't even there, I don't think, yet.
Right. So
there's so many great moments in the book. I don't get how it is just so low for EG. There's so many.
I think this book suffers what some of the other books do, of the two pieces of it don't feel like they mesh together. Like everything in the Deeps doesn't seem like it's connected to the Ordo.
Right.
So they had to have conversations trying to branch them together, but they are easy to feel that they're separate.
Well, take the ghoul attack, for example, this huge flashback, which is very important to understand where Ramirez is coming from and Harry's character and his state of mind at the time.
Might be one of the best moments in all of Dresden Files, that whole flashback. It's so good.
It's one of my favorites, but it has no fucking bearing on the rest of the story other than it explains why Harry hates ghouls so much.
Which does have other world-building things, like the letter from Yoshimo and talking to Lucio a whole bunch,
but
things like that.
Doesn't jive specifically with White Knight. No, that's what I'm saying. It could have been anywhere. It could have been in any story.
So to be fair, it could have been a short story.
Exactly. I mean, it would have been a hell of a one, but specifically, like when you go back and think about what was in White Knight, it's easy to separate that part because it doesn't connect to anything else.
There are some connections that are heavier connected to White Knight than anything else, like the fact that Lash was translating and probably therefore gave her more of a say in how Harry is feeling, which they do point out as she's been making him angrier and angrier. She continues to translate in the Deeps and whatnot.
Right. That was important because Ramirez sees both events, because it's like, as he calls him out later, like at the end of the book, right? Like, you can't fucking speak Latin, but you can speak ancient Sumerian and ancient Etruscan. Like, what the fuck, dude? You're lying to us and you're playing us, which is great because we find out Elaine's doing the same thing. She's just not on the inside, like she's been throwing the tests and hiding from the council as well. But
she should.
Right.
The only thing that annoyed me about the ancient Etruscan and ancient, like, he's using these, like, he's just translating and he's like kind of willy nilly with it. It's like, why didn't he use that to just like showboat the Merlin with the Latin a couple of books ago?
Because
he's trying not to use her.
Exactly.
But then he just willy nilly does it. Like,
in this book, he uses her all the damn time. But I think that's an important thing too. Is that Well, that could be, or he was finally losing that battle, because like even in the final fight with the ghouls, he uses Hellfire to empower his Earth magic spell, doesn't he?
But I mean, since Deadbeat, he seems to be okay at least using the Hellfire. I mean, that was the first thing he did against Cal. He flipped a car onto him using Hellfire intentionally.
I thought that one was an accident, though, because
that was not intentionally. Because the first time he uses it intentionally is to enforce the mind wall against.
You're right.
Okay,
because
but even still, since then he's been
right.
He was using it intentionally in this book a lot. He was intentionally talking to Lash a lot, not trying to tell her to go away.
Right.
Using her to copy the board, using her to like be cool with the vampires because he could hear what they were saying.
Yeah.
Well, it's Harry has a tool and something that could have become a crutch, so better to make him lose it for the next book when he's got to go up against the Denarians again.
Yep.
No, but there's actually so much like great setup for the other books. Speaking of, going up against the Denarians in the next book, that Lash is gone. The Denarians don't know that, so when he's like, Shadow, disable Dresden.
Right.
That's so good. The flashback is great. The water beetles being set up for every future book in this one on purpose, I'm pretty sure. Because it felt kind of out of place, the whole water beetle thing. But like it makes sense in the context of the world building.
He needed to set something up because Demon Reach, right? Dresden's got to have a way to get to the island. So how convenient is it that the book before Thomas gets a boat that he can start doing stuff like that? So,
and he names it the Water Beetle because, of course, he does.
Because it looks like shit, and Thomas is funny too. So
yeah, Ellie, what are you doing here?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you get that. You get the whole like being accosted by security and the cop and having to pretend to be gay. And everything.
Another great moment.
Right.
You say great. Other people say terrible.
I was going to say this is why we got that scene in Cold Days.
What scene in Cold Days?
Yeah, which
the one where he talked to Tanya about being okay with being gay people.
Oh, gotcha. Good times. I just liked the overall getting a lot more of seeing the wizards cut loose, so like that's some of my favorite stuff from Deadbeat, but it's also great here. You see Ramirez be Ramirez, you see,
Galahad.
Camp Kaboom, just the like throwing the obfuscation spell, basically obscuring mist for the D&D nerds, right? It's like such a great low level thing, but it keeps the sniper at bay. You see Harry sprinting and, outpacing Ramirez even. And a bunch of stuff like that. At the end,
I was going to say Ramirez seems to get a little bit of the Harry treatment every time he shows up. Like he gets waylaid pretty much every time he's around in battle, right? I mean, Deadbeat, he's got to deal with what was it, Kumori, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in this one, he gets hurt, and then in Cold Case, he gets hurt.
So he gets the Michael treatment. Like the sidekick.
Well, yeah, he did get the Michael treatment ultimately.
Right.
Except he's still active.
Little too soon since, small favors next. Thanks. So, but
yeah, that's a spoiler.
Right.
Sorry, all of you people that are only reading these books as we are rereading them.
Yeah, because that was a terrible mistake. We spoil everything. Yeah. So so I mean, Ramirez gets beat up a little bit, but I mean, I think part of it is just that it's a reflection of his personality, and Harry went through the same licks. Again, this is like one of the first books that Harry doesn't get his ass kicked before the finale.
He kind of did, but then they showed Elaine doing the Reiki, taking away what probably was a terrible concussion.
Right. Which for Harry, I don't know. I mean, he's been concussed a lot before, so
which just makes it worse.
Right.
Yeah, but he's got wizard healing, so he doesn't.
Maybe
really
that is why he never thinks about like looking into his own past stuff. It's because he's always concussed.
Yeah, I just along the same vein with the wizard parts. I mean, one of my favorite Ramirez moments in the entire series is the whole covering everybody while they're getting out in the portal in the Wraith Deeps, and the whole like, oh, it hurts to be this good, just slinging his magic at the ghouls and shit like that. So
like a moment later, it's like, Harry, there's a knife in my leg.
Right. And there's one in my
There's a
guts.
knife in my guts. They match.
Right. Motherfucker, who put this here? You know.
This is. I think this is really where you realize, like Ramirez is a fucking badass. Like his magic is super powerful.
Right.
His version of a shield is insane.
Right.
Yeah,
Like a ghoul that's like a
entropy
pegging just goes.
Right.
So it's offensive and defensive. I mean, I really like Ramirez's magic. Like, it's just so cool.
And I mean, Harry does something similar as well, but they play in different spheres, right? That's part of what worked so well is that, you know, Ramirez was able to get his shield up faster and was ready with the defense, you know, during the duel. Harry ends up reflecting, you know, the fully automatic machine gun fire or machine pistol, whatever you want to say, back, you know, at, I think from Vittorio to Madrigal at one point, you know, so he does something similar, but in his style, right? It's all brute force shit. You know, the one like sneaky thing Harry did the entire fight was like he put this giant wall shield up from his fucking bracelet and then made it a mirror, and it just stuns Vittorio. Like, what the fuck just happened? And it's like, I can't blame the guy. I wouldn't have seen that coming if I couldn't do it either. You know, so you just get
I thought it was Ramirez who did the mirror, but I'm probably just misremembering.
No, yeah, and Ramirez does the like he just disintegrates like a 10-foot cube of ground that Madrigal falls into, and he's able to use his Warden sword, which is like out of the two of them, he's the only one who could do it to get rid of those stupid arm guards. You know, which is another great moment because it's like as soon as he whips it out, it's like, oh shit, I forgot he had that. You know, it's like that's.
It was even hinted at earlier with the whole. Did you not wonder why you don't have a sword? No, I just assumed you don't like me.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
That's just another way of saying Harry doesn't get a super cool tool because Harry needs to get punched a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, Butcher's been very, you know, upfront with a lot of that stuff. He doesn't get to use cell phones, but everybody else could if they wanted to, and he doesn't get swords because then he'd be too much, and yeah, just.
Instead, he gets to be like the Warden of the Demon Region, the Winter Knight. I mean, that's not overpowered.
Yeah, he gets. He definitely gets cool shit. I mean, no one else.
Yeah, but they're all double-edged swords,
right?
Because
well, yeah, or because it's Harry. You know, like Little Chicago saved his ass this time, and you know Bob's comment from not White Knight from Proven Guilty, where it's like I'm not even sure some of the evil geniuses I worked for could pull this off. You know, like some of the crazy wizards that I worked with. You know, so. It just that's something that's uniquely Harry's. He just doesn't get the combat stuff. You know, he can't make that too easy. He doesn't get to use the internet. That's what Butters is for.
But even that stuff I mean, Little Chicago eventually, spoiler alert, goes away.
Right.
It's probably going to turn out at some point that his mother's gem, if he ever decides to go back to that, is going to fuck with him somehow. Right. Like Leah said it would.
Does she? I guess
she says and changes that there will be a price. There's always a price. And for Margaret, it was that she could not sleep soundly.
Yeah, she said maybe you'll get nothing, maybe it'll destroy you.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
there's no way that's coming back to bite Harry. So.
No, it's going to either bite him or he's going to lose it when he absolutely can't afford to lose it, just like everything else, and that'll be that.
Maybe his mind is just a fertile ground for spirits to impregnate his head or something.
I'm glad you brought that up. As weird of a comment that is in its own right, I'm going to redirect that into the whole Bonnie thing because
he has to get something in.
Yeah,
this is where Bonnie gets consummated,
right?
That's the word we're going with.
Consummated. No,
I don't know what other word to use.
Conceived
is what happens between the husband and the wife. You mean
conception?
Conceived.
I think I might have been thinking about conceived, but said like consummated. Like
I know
his badass id is literally running around with a seductress, you know, angel. Like, of course they're banging while Harry's, you know, busy like being asleep or something. So, you know, yeah. So yeah, you get Bonnie, which like so it was another one of those classic moments where, you know, somebody tells Harry that they know about Mom, so obviously we're never going to see them again. Yeah. But then it occurred to me, I was like, you know, Bonnie being a spirit of intellect technically has potentially access to a lot of that knowledge. So unless it conveniently got burned out in those pathways or whatever, which of course it did, she may know the answer if Harry ever thinks to ask her.
She's a tool that Harry doesn't get to use properly because she's a baby. And so she doesn't know what she knows, and she doesn't even know things like pancakes being inanimate, and she's got to learn.
Right.
So Harry's
maybe in a couple decades she can put the words together in a sentence.
Right. Well, she's the classic all intelligence, no wisdom, I think is what we're going to wind up seeing. Like she's got the knowledge, but not necessarily the application. And
right.
Mm-hmm. So,
which definitely is happening in peace talks. So I safely say everything happens in peace talks. So
right. She's just learning about pancakes in peace talks. She's not giving out any Starborn. Right.
Speaking of work up to pancakes, your mom made some crazy good pancakes. Don't ask me how I know that. So.
Well, I mean, at the very end of this book, because they mention in Skin Game that, Lash sacrificing herself was a form of love, the purest form of creation and all that. Mm-hmm. And at the end, Harry starts being able to play music. He creates that sound that he couldn't do before.
And it was the last time, too.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably the moment of conception, maybe.
I think that's more like the hint of that's the creation. That's her essentially taking root. She's there now. He's able to do this instinctively because she can do things instinctively, like when she was trying to talk to him, and later on books, and his head was going to explode. But you can't control it really. It just kind of happened. So obviously, that seems to be the main hint that she gets, if not everything, 99% of what, Harry knew and Lashiel knew. So,
I mean, she may know everything Harry knew at least, but yeah, like it would be, I don't know, it would be too easy, I would say, if nothing else, that she knows everything Lash knew. And so that's why I expect Jim's going to hide behind, part of his brain got burned out, like Bob says, or whatever.
Well, I think it's just as equally easy that she knows, but she can't really express it because she's an infant by comparison. So she's not going to be able to be handy in anything until, BAT at a minimum.
Sure.
Speaking of fried, or the brain being fried, this is where Jim perpetuates the nasty stereotype that humans only use 10% of their brain.
Yeah. Well, it's Bob too, isn't it? So, of all the things.
Well, it's not like Bob knows anything.
Right.
He is literally a spirit of intellect.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for your contribution.
I'm just saying.
For one. I'm glad we sorted that out.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, spirits of intellect, all cause of problems.
So other random things, just kind of going back through my notes. So I can't remember dude's name. So Mr. Beckett dies in a prison, right? Just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time because coincidences happen in the Dresden Files. And I'm like, would that have been an entropy curse, or does it even matter? Really?
But it probably doesn't even matter. I mean,
right.
I don't know. Prison in Chicago may not be pleasant.
Well,
it happens.
Who set it up for him to get killed was what it sounded like, So my first thought was entropy curse, but I was like, Marcone could have set that up. It didn't have to.
I was going to say, yeah, Marcone could easily have done that.
But
or
Marcone then also offers Helen Beckett a job and feels personally responsible for their daughter's death. I don't think he would try to kill Mr. Beckett.
I mean, I'm sure we don't have a direct motive or anything, but I could think of a bunch of reasons. Like, dude could just be a douchebag, or
he doesn't care. Women and children are good for he's not banging Mr. Beckett.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, for whatever reason, he falls for Helen, but I'm assuming that happened after the fact. Otherwise it becomes self.
No, but if you didn't realize, Marcone had Mr. Beckett killed in prison.
What?
But nobody.
Where have you been for the last 2 minutes?
Right? Did you just fall out of a time bubble? We were just talking about that, and if it made any sense. But so, what's your evidence then? What makes you say that?
I just know it's Marcone.
Oh, okay. You just feel it in your soul.
I just feel it.
Lucio and Dresden are destined to be, even though every single fucking NPC is for Team Murphy, by the way. Lash has brought it up. Thomas has brought it up. Lara has brought it up. But everybody likes to hold on to these Team Molly / Team Lucio fantasies. I'm just
everyone needs to understand they're bringing that up so that when
Molly
they
is a
hook up and she
fantasy.
dies.
It's a thing in sick people's heads because she's a kid and
She's
an
not
apprentice.
a kid. She's almost 30 now.
It doesn't matter. He knew her when she was in pigtails.
Oh, God.
Now Lucio is a mature woman.
Yeah,
Overly.
but the situation's even weirder because she's a mature, 300-year-old woman in a hot 18-year-old body.
Oh, imagine the experience.
Who was psychically forced to like him. She's not going back to that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Never. We're gonna have to go see a couples counselor on that one.
We'll get Papa Rashid / Vatarung to do it, right?
Yeah.
So.
No, but on McCone, how on the fucking nose is McCone if he's the one who gave Beckett her pseudonym as Demeter?
Oh, Harry knows. That's why he calls him out on it. It's like,
yeah,
you're not smart, Marcone. People know mythology. Like, come on.
Like that just seems like I don't know why he would do that.
Right.
I mean, Marcone might have decided on the name or something. It's not like Beckett would have objected to it. She practically admits it to herself. She calls herself a near psychopath because she no longer has anyone to care about.
Well, she also thinks her daughter's dead. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, she is, but she doesn't know she's in a hospital.
Demeter's daughter has been taken to the underworld, and McCone is the ruler of the underworld, and it's just like, and she doesn't
clue in.
She doesn't clue in when he gives her that name.
She's kind of one of those she gets described as being clever and mischievous and what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, but she's not that up and up.
Right.
Yeah.
So to maybe add or change topic.
Oh, good.
Well, you guys are talking. I don't want to interrupt. One thing I really appreciate about this book is that it's a return to form to the Harry Dresden has a crime scene and Murphy's there, and that kind of start that we haven't seen in a little while. It feels like, wasn't the last time we had something that's that kind of opening way back a couple books ago?
I mean, if you want to start with the direct opening, then sure. But I mean, you could kind of argue that he does a little bit of that on his own with, Proven Guilty, and he does a little bit of that in Deadbeat, but it doesn't start it.
Sure, yeah, and even book 6, he's not really working for the department to solve a crime. This one feels a lot more, especially towards the beginning, like it's using some of those noir elements a bit more strongly than we've seen. And then after this, it goes almost into an action adventure adaptation where Harry and the gang, and there's they're doing the things that they do, and it's really unmoored from the constraints of a particular genre of that is the genre of detective work. I don't see him doing much detective work after this book.
I disagree because of Turncoat. He just does it for the White Council this time.
I suppose.
Obviously, Small Favor, yeah, you're right. It's there's no detective-y noir stuff that I can think of. He obviously
they start with the apartment buildings that blew up. I mean, after he gets attacked, at the Carpenters, and Murphy calls him because the buildings blew up from the Hellfire. So they do some investigating.
It actually does the Murphy opening, the Detective Murphy opening.
Well, it's not opening. He opens at throwing snowballs, but yes,
and getting beat up by the 3 Billy Goats.
Mm-hmm.
So,
whereas I guess the point of contrast here is in the first 2 books, certainly first 2 books, it's oriented around a whodunit, and I don't see this as much of a whodunit.
Definitely use the first 2 books as shining examples of good Dresden Files.
Well, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just showing, as far as using plot elements or not. I don't particularly like the first 2 books, but it's showing, I think, Jim experimenting more with the storytelling and characters, having a good sense of who the characters are, and changing them for the future. And he just says that at this point in writing the series, he's definitely demonstrated a much better grasp of what he's doing with this whole setting and all the characters involved.
Yeah, which I really appreciate. He's definitely moving more from the noir and into just general more like
high fantasy,
big world
Right.
And it doesn't have that necessarily investigation. He's still a detective, but it doesn't have that same feel anymore.
No, that's not going to change anytime soon either.
Yeah, and I mean, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, like, it would be boring as shit if literally every book, did that, where it just...
The name walked into my office.
Yeah, Murphy's found a dead monster for some reason, or Murphy's found a dead person who was killed by a monster, or a dark mage, or an insert trope here, so we get a little bit of a difference, but he does still, he's still an investigator at heart. We do see that come around at some point in each of these books. So
she had legs that wouldn't quit. See,
I mean, shit. Murphy didn't hire him in Ghost Story, but he's literally been hired, so to speak, to solve his own murder. Which is just takes it through there too.
It's really all he really.
It was me
do.
all along.
Right?
Yeah.
A lot of all he can do for a lot of that book is detective work.
Right.
Oh yeah. He's a terrible Swayze. He can't even ghost it up until the end.
Yeah, Harry's a good and unlike something. Oh,
He doesn't even make one pot, pottery.
It's one of those interesting things about the Harry characters that his best stories, instead of being like a Batman, where Batman's best stories, Batman is actually a detective figuring things out. Harry's best stories are the Spider-Man stories, really, more than anything. Or it's really more that Marvel hero feel that's kind of light, kind of fun, kind of adventurous, a bit dark, a bit brooding, bit got a bit of anxiety, but never enough to undersell the triumphant win of the character somehow through adversity. Whereas with Batman, it's the best stories have a very strong, serious tragic element, which of course is appropriate. Jim wrote that Spider-Man book. Still haven't read it.
Yeah, I mean, I
wonder
would.
if there's an audiobook version.
It's a comic, dude.
You're gonna audio. Yeah, it was really. You're gonna audiobook a comic.
It'll have 53 words, and you'll.
I thought it was an actual. Okay, I thought it was an actual book.
Well, they call them books now, but it's a
graphic
comic.
novel.
It's graphic. Yeah, I mean,
I thought it was an actual book. Like they always called it a book. Like when he talks about it, he says book.
Yes, because that's the parlance now, because they don't want you to look down on them just because they're a visual format. But
I don't look down on it because it's a visual format. Who does that?
I don't mean you as in you. I mean you as in the you people, everybody.
You Europeans.
What do you mean, you people?
Yeah. Are we really going to go back to that? Are we really going to just try and tread that line more?
Yes.
All right. So
I just think that's confusing.
The Spider-Man thing kind of makes sense to me, because the parts of the Dresden Files that I like the most are when Harry's being clever, where he's not just brute forcing it, whatever. He is using the tools at his ability, or he does come up with some like non-standard, tool or something for the job. This is one of the few, like, I'm trying to think if we've seen anything up to this point where he manipulates better players than himself.
Proven guilty.
Well, okay, yeah, because you could say he does it with the Merlin, right? But he's already.
But he loses that.
He came up on the Merlin already as well, and Ebenezer helped him a little bit because Summer Night. But I don't know. I just don't think the Merlin has been all that clever, at least on screen. Like obviously he's an iceberg for that sort of thing, but there's nothing that sold him. Like Lara is literally in her blood, a manipulator. Whereas the Merlin's just kind of like a manipulative piece of shit, with political power. Whereas like Lara, Marcone, just the White Court in general, they live and breathe this shit.
Right. So also the way he was able to get blood rights in the deeps to work out in his favor, he did it because he was manipulating Lara's tendency to manipulate.
Okay. Which part though? Because I feel like he
knew Lara was waiting and watching when the Papa Wraith went on. I was like, of course my children think it's important. I've told them to.
Right.
And then she takes control.
But
did he also set up beforehand that that's what he was trying to do?
Yeah, he knew that going in. Like that's why his entire goal was not to actually hurt Papa Wraith, but to just make him use his energy, because he knew somebody was going to end up taking him out. He had figured that much out. Yeah, that to me, it's not as strong an argument, but I see what you're saying.
Well, he also had that conversation with Lara right beforehand, didn't they? They talked
a little bit
about how he'd been, I don't remember if they came out right and he told her he'd been neutered, but he basically was saying, this is going to be the opportunity.
Like you'll know your moment or whatever, which I guess thinking about it, she does the exact same thing to him, which is like, you'll know when you need to come out, which is also a great moment. The whole wizard showed up to town, with the little fiery red carpet. But because out of this one, like we get to see him be clever again, in the next few books, but like the next one, I don't know if I'm missing a part, but I mean, he just really pulls it off again in Skin Game, where it's just like the entire thing was a con on people that were better than him. I want to say there's like one other instance, because I feel like he did this with Vatarung a couple of times, but I might be conflating with Cold Days.
Reread?
So no, because I mean the conversation with Rashid in Turncoat is great, but Rashid just thinks he's nuts, right? Like Rashid doesn't sit back and say, "You clever bastard," which is like the reaction you get out of everybody else except for Nicodemus, who's like, "Oh God," when everything gets flipped on him. But I don't know. I like those moments where he's either come up with some new clever magical gimmick, or he's pulled one over on the people that are actually liars and manipulators. And
Turncoat, at the end of Turncoat, because he had Mouse in the private investigator, he had the picture proof.
Yep. That's the other one I was thinking. Yeah, because it's like, oh yeah, speaking of which, Peabody, it's him. We got him on camera, literally.
So. And Peabody, well, the Black Council in general is kind of like he's being hinted at very strongly in this book, because who else could have figured out and sent ghouls to Camp Kaboom?
Right.
Well, yeah, no, it was that was the same in
it was
Proven Guilty.
Yeah, Proven Guilty when they sent them after the first time.
Only 3 people knew, so.
And he knew because he had Lucio under his brain lock.
Mm-hmm.
That's why.
Well, yeah, I mean, sure, but he also literally signed the paperwork, I'm sure. Like, provisions have got to get back and forth. Yeah. So.
Granted, but I just kind of figured it was because, there's no reason to mention Lucio unless you're going to then find out later that she's been brain locked the whole time.
Maybe, but the fact that she's not really a combat role right now makes her, the perfect teacher. She's got all the knowledge in her brain and not nearly as much of the magical muscle. So they let Morgan kind of run. I just don't see it as a direct, like, we brought it up as a tease, but maybe it's pulling double duty, where it's like we had to remind you that Lucio's still running around doing shit.
I don't think it precludes the other options. He had all those other wardens under his whatever. It just they made a point at the end of Turncoat talking about how he went to make sure his brain lock was holding. So presumably that means he's got some general way to kind of like freeze her or shut her down, or he's got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which he did, right? Was the whole conditioning with her being the killer. So
well, yeah, because he basically chucked her in there like in a haze and.
Right.
So whether or not that extended to getting direct information from her, I don't see why he wouldn't. But it doesn't preclude the other options.
Sure. Yeah. Or even just being able to track her or something. Was what I was thinking. But yeah. So one kind of like behind the scenes thing. So we haven't talked a lot about the Black Council and whatnot and what their play was here. But what I found was interesting is that it seemed like they were pretty much getting ready to take the White Court out of like potentially the world. They were potentially going to red court them in the sense that they were going to end up fighting each other, and they were going to end up having a change in power, and it was going to severely weaken the house. Or
Vittorio took over because he managed to kill everyone else. He's under Cowell's direct control. Right. He gets to handle all of the various little fingers that the White Court has already gotten of very powerful governments all over the place.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. I was just thinking there were so many nobles there that they were taking out,
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously that amount of vacuum, so no one can or would have been able to challenge Vittorio. But if he takes control of all of that, he can start a World War III.
Wow.
There's also I think, and that's perfectly fine motive to me. I think there's also the possibility that we know Lord Wraith's got at least something going on with the outsiders in that he's able to summon them to power entropy curses and things like that, and they may or may not be behind his magical protection. If the Black Council's found out, or the Outsiders have found out Lara's taken over now, they need someone new in there to run the show.
Right.
That is actually suspicious that there's a connection for the Outsiders to Papa Wraith, and then there's Cal to Vittorio.
Yeah. Well, and so, I mean, that's worth bringing up too, right? So, like, Lashiel straight up says that it's outsider power, which has made me think, like, was Vittorio or Cal, like, infused with one, or did they just have one nearby? You know, like, maybe that's how Cal ended up surviving, is that, you know, Cal's got somebody riding along with him.
Well, Vittorio was. I mean, didn't they make a point of mentioning he basically changed and got fused with the Walker's power or whatever?
Yeah, it must have been something like that, because he was doing what he always does, right? He was just doing the Malvora despair.
Right, but on like a
huge level. Yeah.
City level for that particular size of what he was doing.
So it was his thing.
I mean, it makes sense in general for the Outsiders to want to have influence and be with the White Court. I mean, of all the vampire courts, they're the mortal ones, so they'd be able to most easily summon them.
Right.
They can blend in the easiest. They work on people's emotions, which would then be able to manipulate them into working for them or summon it. You know, they seem like the perfect people to want to have an influence in or over.
Right.
Also, 2 prime White Court vampires in the Oblivion War, which is very much outsider related, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think?
I mean, it's not just outsider related. Right. It's mostly everything supernatural related.
Yeah, it's here we're splitting hairs in old gods versus old ones, right? You know, because the Outsiders in a way are old gods, but they're even older. So.
Right. I mean, when I think old gods, I'm thinking like, you know, Tiamat and old gods.
Right. But, and I mean, they specifically talk about the, like, some little gods out of like the tribes of Africa or whatever. Like, I'm sure the Hindu gods, you know, stuff like that, like some anyway, because there are so many to choose from there. You know, like a lot of those old folklores, like ancient stuff, whereas like the old ones are, you know, TM H.P. Lovecraft, you know, like the primordial, you know, chaos that was here before order reigned and whatever. So depends on how deep you want to get into it and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, this seems to intersect with that idea, and you know that Gaiman does, where you're like, once you've lost influence and you start getting forgotten and you lose power, and then you get cut off and either essentially just disappear, or in the Dresden Verse case, you get locked into oblivion, the never with no tether to the world.
Yeah, or Sam Neill's Merlin, where you can just forget Mab to death, and you know, so forth and so on. So, I mean, it's definitely an idea that's been around before. It just, I don't feel like a lot of, you know, the modern fantasy writers have brought it through. They haven't weaponized forgetfulness, but it is such a great folklore type of thing, right? Because a lot of folklore things are just, they're kind of ridiculous or way outside the box on the norm. But then when you think about it, it's like, no, that kind of makes sense. You know, you could forget some ancient creature to death, you know.
I was going to say, I think it also, especially nowadays, it's a little harder to go down that road considering the way technology has changed everything. I mean, they make that point of saying that in backup, you know, the way these things go now.
Right. My favorite part about that is how, like, the Wizards, you know, number one way to do shit like that is the counter opposite of how the Oblivion War is, right? Like, Harry even talks about it, even though he obviously doesn't know, so it's not in that vein. But, you know, the whole, like, yeah, you're damn right we published the Necronomicon, because how could it hurt anybody now? Except that he basically, gave that weapon to, like, everybody at the same time, so it's going to be around. But
that's why I forever appreciate Shiro going, you know, like fucking wizards. It's so self-important, as if nothing important could happen without a wizard doing it.
Right.
I mean, in terms of living in the information age, I think the White Council might have the right end of the stick on that one. It's really hard to like completely Oblivion War someone now if it's actually like out there.
Well, and I think a big part of the difference is which one's easier. to water down the power by getting it out there, or to obliterate somebody through the process of the Oblivion War. Not to mention the fact that literally the White Council can't know about it by its nature, because if a wizard knows about it, that gives it even more power. In comparison, because that's why Harry couldn't know. Is because Harry would give rise to all sorts of crazy bullshit if he knew, just a little bit of it, let alone, an entire council of wizards. So it makes perfect sense. It's just fun to see the dichotomy, that everyone's like, okay, we generally hate and want to power check the White Council, but they generally do the right thing. But at the same time, they're colossally fucking this up, and there's nothing we can do about it because by nature of having the problem, we can't involve them, because it'll even get worse than what they're doing. Anyway.
Once that printing press came along, it was all downhill.
Right.
So Gutenberg works for nefarious forces.
Well, that's what I mean. They said that like 3 times with Mab, talking Gutenberg and Grimm's. I mean,
yeah, it was literally Mab did it. So
and it makes sense. She's got every reason in the world to do it.
Right.
Yep. Is there anything else we want to cover on this book? I feel like we covered a lot, actually.
Yes.
What? No part 2? Come on.
No. Last time.
I'm
just saying. Well, if that's it,
I guess so.
I'll wait for you to. Should I close it out?
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for
Self-appointed
watching the Dresden Files podcast, the subsidiary thingamajigger of the Broken Jars Network. Check out all our other podcasts.
Yeah, we have
especially
podcasts for days.
Called,
do we?
It's been a while. How did we do this?
We got a really active one called High Fantasy. Alex, tell us about that.
We talk about Brandon Sanderson, and he never responds.
Wait,
Sanderson never
excuse me? You said Brandon Sanderson, right?
What a good time to plug.
You talking about this guy? Huh?
Wait, Brandon
Sanderson have the title.
Kind of author or something? Does he write books? Or
once in a while. He's kind of infrequent. But
does he write books or does he write, books? Because we know there's a difference.
Yeah, right. Like, is he some kind of graphic novelist?
Like, is he a real author or is he
yeah.
just one of those?
For the record, the Spider-Man novel by Jim Butcher is in fact a novel, not a graphic novel.
Oh, really?
You can even look it up. So
I knew it. See, I'm smart. I know things.
Oh no, he agrees with me. There must be something wrong. I must be an idiot.
Although to be fair, I think that's why no one here has ever read it, because it's an actual.
I can't read.
Okay, what other podcast we got? The Office one. What's it called?
Great Scott.
Great
Really?
Scott. That's right.
No, it's now a Back to the Future one. It has changed.
I thought that was
Really?
First Rec.
Aren't they done yet? I mean, seriously, how much more of The Office can they do?
I think they're getting a little.
Did you do the British one?
I thought that was what their
Good
plan
one?
was next, and then they're thinking Parks and Rec, or like I keep suggesting Simpsons.
Oh wow!
So you'll be going forever, is what you're saying.
They'll be dead before they run out of episodes.
I was gonna say between that and if you did why am I blanking on the name? The British one with the TARDIS.
Oh,
Doctor
Who.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta watch. You're watching from the start on that one. It's just a very different show, right?
It's really a show that didn't it start in the 60s? Of course, it's a very different show.
Right.
Well, yeah, they had a 25-something year hiatus. Yeah.
Yeah.
If your favorite Doctor is literally the first Doctor, that's impressive.
You're dead. That's what you are.
It's only 50 years. There are plenty of people who
We
could
have
have gotten into
Sim
it
Talk
as
as
children.
well. Don't forget Sim Talk.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Sim Talk.
Actual
And
talk.
watch Sim Talk. It's another podcast of the Broken Jars Podcasting Network.
Yes, the
We
one
talked
that's
about-
about professionalism.
And professionalism. Wonderful.
Actually,
I'm wearing a nice shirt.
Ben
What is
is going to be starting a professionalism podcast.
A professionalism podcast.
Oh yes, he's going to teach you how to be.
Yes, as after Jacob starts his etiquette podcast and love of Benjamin podcast, dedicated to me.
Coming soon.
Coming never.
Coming
Well-
as soon as Peace Talks comes out. How about that?
Oh, ouch.
Might actually come out in 2019 then. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful.
You also think it's only going to be 51 chapters, and you're wrong on that. So,
yeah,
it's going to be the Harry Potter book 4 phenomenon.
I remember when Jim put up books almost as fast as Sanderson. Good times.
Ooh.
yes, we all do. We all remember that.
I never remember that. I know it happened.